What do you mean by Fair Debt Collection Practices Act? The Fair Debt Collection Practices Act, FDCPA, is a federal law that regulates the actions of third-party debt collectors in an effort to protect consumers from abusive, unfair, or deceptive debt collection practices. The law sets clear boundaries on how debt collectors can contact individuals, including restricting the times of day and the frequency of contact. If a debt collector violates these provisions, consumers have the right to sue the collection agency or the individual collector for damages and attorney's fees. The FDCPA primarily applies to third-party debt collectors, not creditors collecting their own debts, such as a store owner attempting to collect payment directly from a customer. Debt collectors are defined by the FDCPA as individuals or entities whose primary business is the collection of debts, often using interstate commerce. If a debt collector purchases a defaulted debt from the original creditor for the purpose of collection, they are also subject to the FDCPA. The law limits how debt collectors can contact consumers. For instance, if a debtor informs a collector, either orally or in writing, to stop contacting them at their workplace, the collector must comply and not call that number again. Additionally, within 5 days of initial contact, the debt collector is required to send a written validation notice, which must include the amount of debt owed, the name of the creditor, and a notice of the consumer's right to dispute the debt. Consumers can also request that collectors cease communication entirely by sending a written letter. This letter should ideally be sent via certified mail for proof of receipt. If a debt collector attempts to contact the consumer's family, neighbors, or colleagues to find out the debtor's contact information, they are prohibited from revealing any information about the debt. The FDCPA strictly prohibits certain practices by debt collectors. These include contacting debtors outside of the hours of 8 a.m. to 9 p.m., continuing communication after a request for no further contact, or using offensive language. Debt collectors are also forbidden from making false statements, such as pretending to be law enforcement or a lawyer, or threatening illegal actions like arrest or lawsuits that they do not intend to pursue. In addition, debt collectors are not allowed to disclose the nature of the debt to third parties, except in very limited circumstances, such as contacting a spouse or attorney. They are also prohibited from using shameful tactics like sending debt-related communications via postcard or using language on envelopes that could embarrass the debtor. If a debt collector violates any provision of the FDCPA, the consumer can file a lawsuit against them, potentially receiving compensation for actual damages, attorney's fees, and even punitive damages. The FDCPA aims to balance the rights of creditors to collect debts with the protection of consumers from harassment and deception.